Hello, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We're just getting set up here and making sure that we are streaming and that everyone can see us. We'll get started here in just a second. Any minute now, we will go into our introductions and give y'all a little rundown of what we'll be talking about today. Okay. So hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today for part 2 of our new Facebook Live series, Poultry Cracked Open. Today's episode is called The Tournament System, Pitting Farmer Against Farmer for Pay. My name is Julie. I'm the communications manager for the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project, and I will be moderating today's talk. And while we're waiting for folks to join, I will go ahead and touch a little bit on what we'll be talking about today, as well as give some information and background about SRAP and its mission. So as many of you may already know, consolidation in the poultry sector allows agribusiness giants to manipulate the marketplace. So this reduces farmers' earnings, making it difficult for them to make ends meet. And essentially unchecked consolidation, where corporations control multiple stages of the production process, has created an imbalance of power. So what this does is that it allows industry to manipulate the marketplace, trap farmers in exploitive contracts, push down the prices paid to farmers and ranchers, and it also drives independent producers out of business. So today, in our Facebook Live, we have 3 former contract poultry growers who now serve on SRAP's field operations team. And they are going to discuss how the industry's tournament system, a slot machine style pay structure that pits farmer against farmer, creates an unfair, corrupt, and a discouraging way for farmers to earn a living. Through our contract grower transition program, SRAP helps transform rural communities by engaging contract growers struggling within the industrial ag system. So if you are a contract grower in need of assistance, you can contact us at the link that I'm going to put in the chat right now. So give me just a second to do that. Okay, it's there. Also, SRAP protects communities from factory farms. So through education, advocacy, and community organizing, SRAP helps people protect public health, environmental quality, and local economies from the damaging impacts of factory farms, and to advocate for a socially responsible food future. If you need help protecting your community from a factory farm, you can call us at 503-362-8303. And I will also put that in the chat for people. We call that our help hotline. So you'll see that there in the chat. Thanks for your patience on that. Okay, now for introductions. We're here today with 3 of my colleagues. We've got Craig Watts, Susie Crutchfield, and Michael Diaz, all 3 of whom are former contract poultry growers who now serve on SRAP's field operations team. They're also part of SRAP's contract grower transition program, which looks for ways to help contract growers leave the industrial poultry system behind by training them to work with communities most harmed by industrial agriculture. And we have a link for that as well. So for folks who are interested in learning more about that program, I'm putting that in the chat for you too. So that should be there now. With that, we're going to dive right into introductions, and Michael Diaz is going to start. Michael, you take the floor.
Thanks, Julie. All of us here understand that it's fairly easy to get into contract growing, but it's nearly impossible to escape. So, by providing some personal experiences and insight into the fight ahead for those of you that are in contract growing and are choosing to exit, we're here to help navigate the waters ahead for those of you that are seeking to move on. I myself, my family and I were part of industrial agriculture. We grew for 3 different integrators. Quickly realized that we made a big mistake. And just like Susie and Craig, the industry had a way of tightening its grip down on us and just forcing us out of farming and on a whole. And the result was, us losing our home and our farm. Thankfully, with the help of people like Craig and organizations like SRAP and some others out there like Rafi, we were able to see some light out at the end of the tunnel and do some advocacy work here on behalf of contract growers. Craig.
I'm Susie Crutchfield, and I grow chickens for 25 years. I started in 1987. I started growing because I wanted to have a job at home where I could take care of my children at home. We already had a cattle farm, and we thought that me and my husband thought that that would be a good supplement to the farm. We soon found out that it wasn't. And then in 2012, we were one of the growers that got cut off because of the massive upgrades that our poultry company wanted us to do. And at that point, we had to declare bankruptcy. And then we went on to proceed to file a lawsuit against the company, which the laws in the United States and in Arkansas aren't that good for the poultry grower. So with that in mind, I promised myself that I would always fight for the growers. And that's the reason that I joined SRAP, is to help change the way that the legal system works, also to help growers find their way in getting out and find possible avenues for them to follow through SRAP and through other programs. Craig?
Thank you, Susie. My name is Craig Watts. I am the field director for the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project. I'm also the director of the Grower Transition Program that Michael and Susie are part of. My story dates back to 1991. I had been farming all my life, and then my dad had a heart attack and we got out. And then I started working on an agriculture company. I traveled a lot, saw the world from the inside of an airport, wasn't real enthused about that. I had gotten engaged, getting ready to get married. I was ready to settle down, and I got a chance to come back and do some research work on our farm in North Carolina, and I got the bug to stay. But the issue there was that just starting a contract, not a contract, a row crop operation from the get-go at that time was just financially impossible. And it was at that exact moment the poultry companies came in. They were courting local farmers. The saying in the paper was, we need a few smart birds to raise our birds. And so that just seemed like a perfect deal to me. I always said the last stupid thing I did on purpose was take that meeting, but I took it. And, it seemed great. I have a business degree. I had a world of agriculture experience, and I hate a suit and tie. That just seemed like a perfect fit. And it was okay initially. I don't know if I didn't know enough or it really was okay. That we call it the honeymoon phase. But very quickly I saw that this was not what I was sold. So I kind of grounded out 23 years, and just probably the last 10 were pretty, I don't know. I had not a very good relationship with the company. And so we did an expose back in 2014, and it got into the New York Times. It got on the Reddit board. Lots of media covered it. John Oliver. And so I raised chickens for one more year, just woke up one day and just figured I was done, and sent the email and told them, man, I'm done. And that was January 2016. So I've been with SRAP pretty much ever since. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Craig. At some point, maybe we can pull up that article and put that in the chat, because it's a really interesting read, and I think folks would love to see that. Now we're going to talk about the tournament system, what it is, and how exactly it creates an unfair, corrupt, and discouraging way for farmers to earn a living. Craig is going to give us a little explanation of what that tournament system is and how all chicken farmers are paid through that.
Well, if they're contract growers tuning in, I'm sure they're very clear on how the tournament system works. But just to put it in layman's terms, I looked it up, and when I Googled what is the poultry tournament system, the first three things came up were National Chicken Council, National Chicken Council, National Chicken Council, which are lobbyists for the industry. Their terms are, they guarantee, this is talking about the tournament system. This is what the National Chicken Council is. They, meaning the companies, guarantee a base pay for the chicken. Bonuses are given to farmers who raise healthy flocks and invest in their farm. That's all it says. Hey, that sounds pretty good. You know, work smart, work hard, do some investment. You should do the best, but it doesn't work that way because the thing was designed by the major processing chicken companies. And it's kind of, I've always called it kind of a Ponzi scheme, but in a nutshell, it's who can get the chickens the fattest or to market weight the quickest with the least amount of feed. The way it works is you sell your flock, and say you have 500,000 pounds of chicken and you have 1,000,000 pounds of feed. That's how they divide it out. That feed has got a cost associated with it. So the pounds you move are divided into the total cost of that feed, and that gives you an average cost per pound. They have 10 farmers in a week. They add that up, divide it by 10, they strike an average, and the 5 that have less cost than average get a bonus, and the 5 that have higher cost than average get a deduction, meaning the bonuses are paid from the farmers on the bottom 5. The fallacy is there's always going to be roughly 5 winners, and there's roughly going to be 5 losers. So if you have the 10 best chicken farmers in the United States of America, 5 of them are going to be good, 5 of them are going to be bad. If you have the 10 worst chicken farmers in America, 5 of them are going to be good, 5 of them are going to be bad. So it's a system designed by the companies. It's a cost control system where they can control their input cost, at least from what they pay the farmer.
And is this tournament system specific to the poultry sector?
Is that for me?
Yeah, I'm just curious if that's something that's just specific to poultry.
I'm not real sure how the contract hog system works. I'm sure it's probably some sort of hybrid. I really don't know. The turkeys, I'm sure, have a similar system, but all I know is chickens, man.
Okay, well, thank you for that background, Craig. Now we're going to go into some questions. So when you first became a contract poultry grower, how soon did you learn about the tournament system? How was it explained to you? And was it optional to participate in?
Susie, you want to field that one first there?
The system was not really, I can't remember exactly how it was explained to me because that was in 1987, but it was basically, if you done good, you were on the top, and if you done bad, you're on the bottom. And that's basically how the tournament system was told to me and by the company. And then the company told me if I was stayed below the average for 3 batches, then I would be put on a probation period. If I didn't get it back up within that period of time, then you would be cut off. And that didn't matter whether it was your first 3 batches or if it was your last 3 batches, you would still be cut off, even though your guys' was brand new. Michael?
Yeah, it was, you know, when we first became contract growers, you know, unfortunately, the only transparency I would say about the tournament system was the upside of it. You know, we only heard about, I was only sold on, like Craig said a minute ago, you know, if you have 10 growers, you got 5 of the best and 5 of the worst. And we were only explaining our position as being 5 of the best. So we were told about bonuses and incentives and you know, all the good things about playing in that tournament system. At no time at all will we ever, you know, explain that my success or any other farmer's success came at the detriment of some other farmer that went out with you that week. So, in saying that, the only transparency with the whole tournament structure was what they wanted me to hear, basically. Craig.
Susie, I'm really surprised that they gave you that much information up front. Well, when they sat down with me, and I still got the thing where the guy wrote it out in his hand and said all they talked about strictly was bonuses. I was 24, 25 at that time, and he's like, man, with your education, your background, we just know you're going to be a good one. Of course, I was eating it up, and I didn't really pay attention to the red flags because they never, ever said anything about the bonuses were paid from, it was a Rob Peter to pay Paul system. Another thing they didn't really explain was that base pay doesn't mean base pay. Only in a chicken contract does base mean average. Merriam-Webster is spinning in his grave right now when he reads those chicken contracts. Base is actually much lower than average. I mean, to me, base is bottom. It's not in a chicken contract. So that was never explained. And like I said, all they did was just talk about the bonuses. And I swear this is no lie. The guy said the income potential was unlimited. That's what he said. I could hear him just like it was yesterday. So yeah, I was definitely sold the upside, but never anything about getting cut off or anything like that. It was all good.
Yeah, they never explained to you, Craig, that the tournament system, the company itself is only going to pay base pay for every pound of chicken that is brought in that day, and that's all they're going to pay. They have to take for you to get a bonus, they have to take it away from somebody else, and that is never explained.
So I know that we touched on this a little bit, but when you first learned about the tournament system, did you think it sounded like a fair way to be paid?
Well, when you only hear about the positives, you only hear about the bonuses. Of course, you think it's a fair way to get paid. It's not until after you get into the system, you get locked under contract, that you realize, oh no, what in the world happened here? If you fall below average, you're hit with a shocker. The only one that wins in a system such as that is the integrator. There's no way in the world for you to have a balance sheet, for you to budget, for you to forecast, where you're going to wind up at, where your farm's going to wind up at the end of the year. The only one that has any consistency with that is the integrator themselves.
Yeah, and they don't explain to you that they have control of everything. They control your feed, they control your chickens, they control everything that makes that process happen. And they make it sound like when they're explaining it to you, it's all on how hard you work and how good you do. But there is so much other variables that they control, because they control your feed, your chicks, when they're picked up, when they're brought to you, what kind you get, how many you get. And that is one of the things that was never, ever explained, is the control that they have over them.
So what would you say were the major cons of the tournament system, and how did it affect your livelihood?
The major cons of the tournament system that affected us was one, you went out with people that worked for Tyson, whether it would be managers, whether it be truck drivers, whether it would be field techs. You went out with them just like you did any other grower. Then you also, in our contracts, when we went out, you would have some growers that had 6 houses, it would have 3 contracts going out at the same time as I would, with 1 contract on 6 houses. This was an issue because if they had 1 house that got sick, it only hurt that 1 contract. If I had 1 house got sick, it pulled my whole contract down. So when you try to compete with a guy that has got 6 houses with 3 contracts, and you've got 1 house I've got 6 houses with 1 contract, you can't compete fairly. And this was done across the board. There was a lot of different growers that had more than one house on had more houses, but had several contracts. Also, they cannot guarantee all growers the same feed, the same chickens. And that hurts you too, because one grower may get 80% male birds and the other grower may get 80% female birds. You can't compete with, because they don't get bigger. I mean, this is also stuff that is never explained to you. Craig, did they explain that to you like that?
I don't know if you wanted to come off mute or not, but we got.
I'm just gonna hold off your question to the next question for me, so I'll let it ride.
Well, how did they notify you when you of your ranking and how your birds have been slaughtered?
How did they notify me of my ranking?
Yeah.
Well, what had to happen was they had to go to the farm and physically catch all the chickens on the farm, put them on the trucks that they already had tear weights for, and then they would drive the truck back across the scales loaded with chickens to get a gross weight. Then they would subtract the tear from the gross, and that gave the actual weight of the chickens. And if I might have had 10 trucks, 20 trucks, I can't remember. I think it's around 16 every time. But that happened to every farm that sold out that week. And so when they got all the cost data together for all the 10 farms and got it all divided out and put the magic pencil to it and got it just like they wanted it, we were either notified with our settlement, which we generally got the Friday after we moved out, or sometimes the service tech would tell us. But I never did like calling ahead of time, because if it was bad news, I didn't want to stew about it. I just, and sometimes if you called the flock tech and he gave you some information, it might not be up to date. So for me, when the settlement came and I had to check in my hand, that's when I was notified.
So were you able to actually be present on site when your flocks were weighed to determine the weight, which determines your success in your rank?
Julie, if you listen to me enough, you're going to hear me use this word a lot: transparency. All right. There's no transparency in the chicken business. None. Just like Susie was saying, having to compete against management, having to compete against staff. I know not every integrator out there allows their personnel to own chicken houses, but there are enough of them out there that do allow it. Growing for 3 different integrators, one of the integrators we grew for did allow management, field reps, service techs. They all had chicken houses. We would go out and get weighed. And you were going up against people that were getting paid for their day-to-day employment by the integrator. Were we able to be present when our flocks were getting raised? Technically, legally, they can't deny you that. I would, we were allowed to be there, but then again, these companies know how to exert extreme dominance and total control by mandating that when birds are being picked up on your farm, you needed to be present. You needed to be there. God forbid something came up while the birds were getting caught, and some equipment get damaged, or somebody get hurt, or just something that needed your attention. You had to be there. So I'm not an expert that can clone myself to be in 2 places at one time. So naturally we had to be at the farm while our birds were going off on 18-wheeler loads to get loaded. I might add that that is a small part of the equation. Am I allowed to be there when my flock is going out to get weighed? If I'm going out with 10 other farmers and you're pitting me against every other farmer for pay, then wouldn't it make sense that all of us are allowed to be present when each other's flocks are getting weighed? Farmer B ought to be present when my birds are getting weighed. Farmer C ought to be present when Farmer A's birds are getting weighed. We all ought to have that transparency so that we can sleep at night, so that trust can be built. I'll never forget the day that I was working with a certain field tech, who was one of the guys that used to come out and look around our farm and check us out and see how things were going. That the field rep told me to he told me to fudge on my mortality count for the day. Well, if I fudged on my mortality count for the day, that was going to have a direct impact on the ratios that were being made to calculate an average weight that they were going to base everybody's pay off of. And at that point, I sat there and thought, I said, my goodness, I said, how in the world is he going to ask me to fudge on my mortality count? The man looks at me and he says, every other farmer is doing it. And when he told me that every other farmer was doing it, I knew at that point that that was a model of failure. There's no way to succeed. You might as well go to Vegas and bet everything you got.
Wow. So how would you say that the tournament system affects your flock check?
Okay, I'm gonna go back a little bit before I actually got the check cut to kind of reiterate a little bit what Susie was talking about. Is because this tournament system, what is sold is, it's sold as an assessment of the farmer's management, which it that's the way it should be. If you work smarter, you work harder, you should get paid more. But that doesn't mean anything in the tournament system, because if you go to that same Chicken Council website I was just talking about, it absolutely says all farmers are delivered this equal quality chicks and feed. Now, that is logistically impossible. You cannot hatch out 2 million chicks a week and every one of them have the same genetic potential. And I would challenge anybody to a debate on this. Anybody, I don't care. If you have a dog and he has 5 puppies, they're not going to be the same. There's going to be at least one runt, and then all the rest of them are going to be a little bit different colors. There's just no way it can be done. And that the only way it works as an assessment of management is if all inputs are equal, but all inputs are not equal, and those inefficiencies and inequities that they put on the farmer gets absorbed through that tournament system. Again, like Michael said, the one that comes out the winner is the integrator. So you can have the age of the breeder flock, you can have the health of the breeder flock, you can have the sanitation of the hatcheries. I had birds one time, they hatched out on a Tuesday, they didn't deliver them to a Wednesday or something like that. It was 24 hours. They sat on the floor of the hatchery with no water and no feed. Then they brought them out there for me to raise. Guess what? They died. But, it didn't take a crystal ball to figure that one out. Time on the truck, the weather that these chicks are delivering. I mean, really, really hot or really, really cold will have an effect on them. It'll stun them. So how it affected my check, I just put it very simply. The only thing that consistent about it was inconsistent. I have been the top grower, I have been the worst grower, and I have been the every point in between grower. I'm the same guy doing the same thing. What's wrong with this picture?
Wow, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I think that helps put a lot of things in perspective, for sure. So I guess it looks like we have one last question for y'all. Did the tournament system divide farmers? And if so, how? And did it affect your relationships with fellow chicken growers?
Well, I'll tell you a story about, we had a growers meeting one time and there's an old grower stood up in the meeting and he was talking about him and his next door neighbor. They could not get along. They were enemies until they got out of the same week. They grew chickens in the same week. When they got out of the same week and wasn't growing against each other, they could become friends. And that's just how they do. They pitch against each other and they tell you what your neighbor's doing. He was number one last time. They definitely pitch you against one another. I know me and one of my friends grew in the same week. And the next time the chickens come around, we both done real good because we talk back and forth and give each other, advice on what we were doing. The next time that we got chickens, she went 1 week and I went in the next, and they didn't let us stay in the same week again.
Thank you, Susie, for that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, let me jump in on that. Did it affect our relationship with other growers? Absolutely. The poultry integrators don't want you to have a relationship with any other grower. They don't want you talking. They don't want you, you know, sitting there talking about problems or solutions, or they want to block you off. Farmers coming together, grouping together, joining hands together, that's a problem for them, and they don't want that. So, you know, they pit us against each other on purpose. That is planned and it's tactful.
Yeah, Sheila, can I jump here just for 1 second? I won't be long.
Absolutely.
When we first started, we had it was like a quilting bee. It's like this farmer went out of chickens. 4 or 5 of us would get together. We'd drag our equipment down there. And while he was sleeping, recovering from the all-nighter he just pulled moving chickens off his farm, we would get his houses ready for the next flight. When he woke up, all we had to do was let the equipment down. He was ready for chickens. And that was fun. That was enjoyable. I met a lot of people like that. And then all of a sudden, that was kind of frowned on. Oh, you're going to spread disease. But even though their folks go from farm to farm to farm to farm, they don't spread any disease. But if a farmer goes from farm to farm to farm to farm, he's going to spread disease. Yeah, makes about it makes no sense, but that's the logic. And they came up with this new word, biosecurity. That's another issue altogether. I'm not even going to get into it.
Okay, well, we're going to open it up to Q&A here in a second, but first I just wanted to say that the good news in all of this is that the proposed changes to the Packers and Stockyard Act could actually lead to better protections for farmers to prevent these types of injustices. And I'm going to come back to that here just in a second, because that is what our third episode is going to be about. But just real quick, we had a question from someone about the bird flu. So I thought, Craig, you might want to speak to this. Someone asked if any of you were growing during the avian flu when that happened, and do you know what they did with the carcasses, the dead birds?
In 2015, yes, I was raising birds with the avian flu outbreak. Naturally, the one that's happening now, none of us were because we're all former. In a perfect world, they'll in-house compost them, meaning they'll put the birds in the middle of the house and they'll cover them up with litter and let them break down, and then they'll go spread it on the fields. But sometimes they have to get the houses back into production, and they'll make long windrows of chickens and litter, and they'll let them compost outside, which is horrific because it's in the elements. It's going to be just a fly infested buzzard fest. And you can put them in the landfill, you can bury them in certain parts of the country. However you do it, it has issues, with a potential environmental, to be an environmental disaster, really. Because some of these egg farms that get the bird flu, they're culling out like 5 million. What are you going to do with 5 million chickens? That's a big pile.
Wow. Yeah. Huge. Did anyone else have anything to say about that? Nope. Okay. Well, folks can put questions in the comments. We'll give people a chance if they have anything they want to ask. But while you are doing that, we do have a question. This question says, this seems like a highly risky way for growers to earn a return on the investment they have to make up front in their farms. Why would banks give loans to finance these operations if they know the business is so risky?
Go ahead, Michael. I see you laughing.
Your guess is as good as mine. How about that? That is, that's a whole nother Facebook Live can of worms to open up. It blows my mind. I can't understand why they would do it. We've said in the past, Craig, you've joked about it, said, it's easier for some people to go in there and finance a $1 million farm and get turned down to buy a new Chevrolet truck. So I don't know. That's the $1 million question. But believe me, I think all of us here are anticipating some type of transparency on that as well.
Juliet, let me jump in here. The reason it's so easy to get that money is the FSA will guarantee loans up to a certain amount. And then once it gets out of that range, the SBA will guarantee loans up to a certain amount. And what that means is if the loan goes bad, the government will pay the bank up to 95% of that loan. So kind of after the first year that operation exists, the bank really has no more skin in the game at that point. So why wouldn't they write it? It's that, to me, is like, if you cut that out, that's the head of the snake to me. If you get rid of that finance and that easy money, and our government would get out of it, because I've heard the industry say, oh, the government needs to get out of private business. I'm all for that. Get out of it. No more guaranteed loans. And you would automatically probably see contracts get much better if nothing else happened.
Sorry, I was muted. So we have a question about how have your fellow farmers responded to you speaking out?
I've had support from a lot of people. They didn't want to do it. They didn't want to get on camera, but they supported me in all of the different avenues that I've took to get the word out about the poultry industry and how bad they are. And I know I come in, me and Craig started doing interviews and telling our story all about the same time. I think I was maybe a year and a half ahead of Craig, but not long. But we've been telling our story ever since. I've been telling mine ever since 2012, and I've received a lot of support.
It was funny, maybe, my friends who grew chickens, who were my friends before I spoke out, are still my friends today. That hasn't changed. Not all poultry farmers, liked it. And a lot of the reasoning was not so much they disagreed with what I did, was if we changed the industry, they knew it could get worse. So, it's better bird in the hand and it's better than two in the bush. And that's just about, pretty much, I've had good support. What I have had is support from the public in general, that was something that they hadn't really seen. And so I remember when I released that expose in 2014, there was a Facebook post and the guy said, yeah, great job, X company, singling out a farmer who wants to show us what's really happening. And I realized right then I had the public, and that was good enough. And I had support at home. So that made it even better.
Awesome. I think I found the link for that article. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat too, in case folks are interested in reading that. I think we have one last question. Have growers ever tried to organize together to change the system?
Absolutely.
I think about every state tried to get a poultry union or a poultry program, and the companies spied on them, go around and kind of threaten on them, letting them know that they didn't like that. And I don't think that of any of them that I know that really succeeded in my area. I don't think there is one. They could be that I don't know about, but I don't think there's any in my area that made it. They did try to organize, but the companies wouldn't let them.
We had an organization in North Carolina that was pretty strong in the 90s. There was a national organization that was really strong, and I can tell you for a fact the folks that were the board in the national organization, all of them got cut off. So and Susie's exactly right. It happened at one of our meetings. Was like the integrator would ride by where you're having a meeting, and they would take pictures of whose truck was in the parking lot. I'm not exaggerating. This is crazy, man. It's like racketeering, but and it intimidated farmers. So the organized, I always say it's like herding cats with a water pistol. Farmers were hard-headed anyway, and independent anyway. I always say if you got, it's hard to get three farmers to agree on anything, but yeah, that the companies did not like that organizing, and it just that tournament system, splitting them up and pitting one against the other, it throws water on it.
Yeah, that's very, very same atmosphere over here. We whatever organization tried to gain some momentum, it was quickly shut down and watered out. Most of the farmers around here weren't willing to stick their neck out and try to fight for any change for fear of retaliation.
Yeah, I'm sure when you're millions of dollars in debt, that plays a major factor as well. That's a scary thing.
Yeah, I always said there's two ways to control a person, a debt and a sword. And I would opt for the sword if I had to do it all over again. It's quick and painless.
Well, I think that wraps it up for the questions today. I guess in conclusion, we just really want to thank everyone for joining us. We really appreciate your time and your interest on this matter. We do have 2 more episodes coming up in this Facebook Live series. The next is happening on May 3rd, and that will discuss how strengthening the Packers and Stockyards Act could protect farmers from the deceptive anti-competitive practices. We'll be creating a Facebook event for that soon. So just tune into our Facebook page and look for that. And then just real quick, I'll tell you about the final episode, episode number 4. It's titled Why Independent Growers Aren't Really Independent. Farmers are often, they're contracted to raise poultry as independent growers, and the title leads farmers to believe that they're in control of the daily operations on their farms. But as we've discussed a little bit here today, the truth is that the agribusiness giants, they own everything that makes money, while the farmer takes on the risk and the debt. So stay tuned for those next couple of episodes. And I think that's all we have. We thank everyone for showing up today, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. So take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Julie.
Thank
Thank
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.